when I talk about like how I'm depressed and how like I have felt suicidal, I think the only thing where I genuinely like put the brakes and start pedaling backwards and will probably run out of the room is when somebody's like, it's okay because God loves you.
This is the Humans of Gaming podcast, an open and honest conversation about games, life, and belief.
Hello and welcome to Humans of Gaming. I'm Drew Dixon. I'm the chief content nerd at Love Thy Nerd and co-host of this here podcast that you're getting in your ear holes.
Yeah.
And I'm joined with Chris Gwaltney. Hey, Chris.
I'm Chris, chief executive nerd for Love Thy Nerd, and I was fortunate enough to get to listen to Drew nail that intro.
Yeah. One time I said earballs and you like lost it.
You
so
did.
I didn't. Man. I really like that phrase, but I don't know. Is it like inappropriate or something?
I mean, you know, anything can be inappropriate if you think hard enough about it.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
So,
yeah, we had a really cool conversation on this podcast. I can't wait for people to hear it.
Yeah. And fair warning, it's a little longer than we normally do, but we were just having such a good chat. We just kind of wanted to keep going. So
yeah, I could have talked to Marie Shanley is her name, also known as Mxiety on Mixer and Twitter. And so could have talked to her for a long time, but doing fascinating work in the world of mental health and also gaming. She's a streamer. She talks about mental health on a game streaming platform on Mixer. And is, setting out to
super open, really open. You will hear some deep personal stuff that she just willingly shared, which is very refreshing, and I think helps to destigmatize mental health and talking about it and stuff. So super, super good talk.
Yeah. And she's does a lot of medical research, but she's not a therapist, and so this isn't about giving people advice on their mental health. But it is very much, her work is very much about let's destigmatize this. Let's have honest conversations about it. Let's point people to the help they need rather than think, hey, we're gonna be the ones to give you the help. But really, really cool conversation. And but before we jump into that, Chris, I think you were going to tell us about something cool at Love Thy Nerd.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast, you may or may not know we have other podcasts. We have a whole podcast network, and we're trying to tell you about all of them during our podcast. So one that we haven't talked about yet is the Free Play podcast. And the Free Play podcast is just a barrel of fun. Wouldn't you say, Drew? Just a barrel of laughs.
Yeah. It's a lot more laughs generally than on this podcast. Although I think we got a few on this episode.
Yeah, we had some good ones. We had some zingers.
Yeah.
Man, they're just a lot of fun. Bubba, Matt, Kate, three of our founders for Love Thy Nerd, and they just talk all things nerd. They're super into board games, obviously, but they talk video games. They talk TV shows, movies, just general nerd stuff, and just have a really good time. They're a ton of fun. So it's a great time. Check it out. Free Play podcast. Find it anywhere. And maybe just harass them a little bit. They respond pretty well to verbal harassment. So
yeah, definitely do that. And they have a episode. I'd recommend, if you're wondering where to start, because there's a ton of episodes of Free Play. You could just start with the most recent one, but I recommend the Ask Me Anything or Ask Us Anything episode, which is number 80. It's just a super fun listen, and I could listen to them talk about anything, honestly, but it's just one of those kind of podcasts where the rapport is on point, and you'll laugh a lot. I have a blast listening to it every week. So definitely check it out.
Yeah.
But also want to encourage you, like, hey, if you like free play, you like this podcast, you dig what we're trying to do on the website, you've heard about what we do at conventions, and you think that's pretty cool, would you help us out? Would you help us do those things? None of those things are free. They all cost us time and money and energy, and we need help. So just go to lovethynerd.com/give and consider like what you could give, what you could reasonably give. I know it's like kind of a hard time right now for a lot of people financially and stuff. So don't want to tell you have to, but you kind of do if we want to keep doing this. No, but yeah, I think in these difficult times, we all need to figure out ways to help each other. And that's all we're asking for, is just help us out if you can. And because that's what we're all about, is helping nerds.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool.
With that said, I hope that you really enjoy this this conversation with M.
Yeah. And if you don't, check your pulse, because it's a good one.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Not bad.
Not bad. All right, we have a special guest, and that's Marie Shanley, also known as Mxiety. How are you?
I am, considering all things, not bad. Not bad.
Yeah, we were just talking before the show. It's just like it's a really weird time to be
It's
alive.
a weird time.
It is a weird time
to like ask people how they're doing, because we're so used to just being like, oh yeah, fine.
But like nobody's fine.
Yeah.
At all.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But so you're hanging in there though, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just have a lot going on right now. I'm also buying and selling a house, because that process started before there was a worldwide pandemic. So, and you don't just like stop doing that once you're in the middle of it, because people want your house and you want the other house you want to move into. So it's just chugging along, and that all has to happen at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then I released a book recently, and work. I also have a 9-to-5. And so we've just been on a coast of like, there's a lot going on. And then the pandemic happened. And I know I said this before the show, but like, I really do feel like it's like its own form of like, it's one of those like weird fever dreams you have where you're like, and then there were zombies, but then I woke up and I was in a castle. And so it was okay, because I had all these weapons and it was fine. And then all my friends were there, but like not really. They looked like my friends. Like, it sounds like a weird fever dream that you're describing, but it's like it's reality. You don't get to wake up and be like, oh, okay, thank God, that was weird. Like it's still happening.
It's here and it's happening
for a little while.
Yeah, I can relate to that, because we were talking about this before, but it's just, we're in this weird place where, so my wife and I, we had some water damage to our home because of a leak in our pipes. And so like, we had all that worked out to have that fixed this week, and it's all being fixed. And so we had to move out of our house into my parents' house, who live in the same area, thankfully. So thankfully it's somewhere to go, right? But then there's all this tornado here in Nashville that hit a little over a week ago, and it's just crazy. It's like, I could not have drawn up this week, like if I was coming up with like a plot for a TV show, it would be a great plot for a TV show with lots of weird dramatic tensions, but I would not have ever thought of it.
Hey, I'll tell you what though, we are getting some quality freaking 2020 memes right now. Like,
oh my God, so spicy. Chef's kiss. Mwah.
Quality.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I requested some today in my Twitter feed, and people delivered. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to be greedy. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to be greedy, and I'm going to ask for it on Discord. And I got some more of that. It's great. It's beautiful. Yeah. It's a beautiful time to meme. They're nice and spicy right now. Catch them, pick them up.
So, how would people know you? What do you do? Why are you on this podcast with us?
That's a great question. No, but seriously. So I am a mental health talk show host. It's a lot more. We talk about mental health and a lot more, because really mental health is a part of pretty much everything. But yeah, so we do interviews, we do discussions on just life topics. We do interviews with professionals in the mental health field, or with people who are willing to share their journey with mental health issues. And then on Thursdays we play games, because that's what you're supposed to do when you stream. And people watch me terribly stumble through them, like literally bad at Stardew. I'm bad at Stardew, you guys. So that's just that gives you all the context you need. Yeah, but it's fun to watch me be a goof and laugh at myself, and and it's a great place to create a community, because people are like raw and honest in aspects of their life that they don't get to maybe talk about otherwise. And then it's you create this like amazing connection with people, and then we all hang out and laugh, and I feel like we laugh even harder because we know what the downside what the other side of laughter is like. Man, that was very Ralph Waldo Emerson. I'm sorry about that, but
if you're not laughing, you're crying.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're streaming on Mixer, that's right?
I'm streaming on Mixer. I just got partnered as of fresh on Thursday. Yes, pretty stoked.
Nice.
And
Congrats.
I just wrote, thank you. And I just wrote a book. I just released a book. It's a compilation of all of my blog posts. So I'm also a blogger. And then in my qualifications to do everything that I'm doing is I'm a medical editor at my 9 to 5, and my background is in research. And I have a bunch of certificates, but mostly my qualification is that I'm a human being with a heart and beating soul and 10 years of diagnosed mental health issues myself. And I do not. People have come into the show and been like, so is this like a Dr. Phil situation where you're going to give me advice? And please, I just want to make sure anybody who hears this does not think that they could do that. Cause I have to very nicely talk you down. Like be like, I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry if you were coming here for that.
Do you get that a lot? I'm sure you do. You get that a lot.
It's in the show, maybe not so often. On the show, during the show, it'll be a lot of, are you qualified to do this? And I'm like, well, I'm qualified to do what I'm doing, which is talk about mental health and my experience and research and talk about current events that are mental health related. Yeah, I'm qualified to do that, but I'm not qualified to be a therapist, if that's your actual question. But yeah, I get that. And then people usually ask for help in DMs, which is like, I had somebody several times, I've had people message me, but one time somebody was like, it's an emergency. I need somebody. My friend is suicidal. And I was like, whoa, I am so sorry that that's happening with you. And this is what I would do if I was your friend. Here's all the resources I possibly have. Make sure they're safe. Maybe if you care about your friend, maybe consider taking mental health first aid if this is something that happens to them often and you want to be there for them in a good, safe manner. But other than that, like here's how you can find a therapist. Like, please, here's every resource. Thankfully, they're all like, I don't have to like type all this out. They're all on my website. Thankfully. So I just, I link out to all of that and kindly I'm like, hey, I'm not sending you away. This does matter. This battle is really, really important. I'm not the right weapon to be using.
It's such an important boundary. Do you find like, are people pretty cool with that boundary when you draw it? Or have you had people that are like, they just keep pressing into it?
I found both. Most often, I feel like people are okay and they step back. What makes me nervous is that there are plenty of people online who like they might have stepped back from me, but then they'll just go and find that somewhere else because people feel like they want to help and they feel like they want to save others, and that boundary is not as clearly drawn. So what actually happens most often is I'll get other content creators coming to me and being like, hey, I thought I was helping this person, but then they keep coming back and they're really not well. And I thought I could help, but now I'm way in over my head. What do I do now to draw that boundary? And so that happens way more often than, because usually people come in and they're like, therapize me. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And, they that's it. That's the end of that story. And so like, they will literally come into the Discord, turn around and leave. And like in the Discord, we have, speaking of that boundary, we have a 60-40 rule, which is this idea that relationships are not actually 50-50, they're 60-40. So somebody's always giving 60 and some not all. somebody at any given time is giving 60 and somebody at any given time is giving 40. And then you go back and forth and kind of seesaw who's giving what at what time. And so, that's a rule we have in the community. Like if you're here only to take, you're not going to have a good time because eventually people aren't going to help you. But if you're here to create a space for others the same way everybody else is creating a space, you'll find a lot of support and love. And that seems to work. I'm sure we lose out on a lot of people who, need emergency help, but we're also not the right resource to go to for that. So I'm okay with that.
Well, it's weird because we live in this culture now where we want everything immediately and we want everything for free,
Yes.
So it's like if I know somebody that's researched a lot about mental health, then that's good enough.
Yeah.
That's how people think.
Yeah. And so good enough with the most important organ in our body. Good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, good enough. Yeah. People.
And it's I know how much therapy could cost, so I'm going to ask.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
They'll look at the price of even like one of those Talkspace apps or whatever. Not if they're sponsoring you. I'm sorry. They're decent.
Well, they were going to, but
not anymore. They don't have to sponsor me. I'm comfortable with it. But please do sponsor these lovely gentlemen. They're doing hard work.
Like any sponsors, really.
we take whatever.
But no, they're not bad. But you look at the prices there, and they advertise themselves as cheaper than therapy, and like, sorry, but not really. Like, not any therapist that I have talked to that does a sliding scale and all that. But that's really hard work. That is hard work. If I'm not feeling well, I don't want somebody to be like, okay, so can you, here's a 10-step program. And I understand you're suicidal, but you're going to have to unsuicidal yourself for these 10 steps. And then once you go through them, you'll have to jump through literally a flaming hoop of fire. And then after you're done, you will finally talk to a therapist. But after that, you have to deal with insurance, and then you're on your own. And that's the United States healthcare system in a nutshell. Man, I
wonder why more people aren't like, more people who need therapy aren't getting it. So.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I'm so salty. I'm not normally this salty.
It's understandable. So, I mean, I know you're not like giving people medical advice, but you are, I think, helping a lot of people through your blog and through your talk show. So maybe talk, because I find your content like super helpful. I was just reading earlier today this article that you wrote on your blog about why social media upsets us and what we can do about that. Because I was thinking, man, like this is really helpful. So maybe tell for our listeners who haven't checked out your channel or checked out your blog, like what kinds of things you tend to talk about, and an example of two of things that maybe lately that you've delved into that were particularly interesting or helpful for people.
Yeah. So my big shtick is I talk about my experience and then I try to back it up with research, right? So like the article that you're talking about is exactly that. I notice that social media sucks for me and it makes me feel bad. And then I ask why, and then I do some research and I find some sources and I figure out, okay, that's awesome. Okay, now I'm going to put this together. And then I end up finding that people will come and be like, hey, can you write about this thing? Because I've been feeling it recently and I don't know why that's happening. And so recently I've had less and less time to do that, which is super upsetting, but I am going to get back to that, I swear. But that's what the whole book is. It's the compilation of all those blog pieces that I've written in that same vein. So that's my writing. My recent stuff has been a lot more focused on content creators themselves because I feel like it's an unexplored piece. Like it's new media, right? It's like not to sound super cheesy and buzzwordy, but phenomena, right. And we talk a lot about like, well, where do content creators get their personal time and they're streaming for all these hours, and that's unhealthy. And that just seems like common sense unhealthy. But what people don't realize is the mental health pressure, the pressure on your mental health, the strain that you have to lift up a community and to constantly be, a certain character. I'm not saying persona and I'm not saying like fake, but I am saying you definitely you have to put on your good side, right? Like you don't go on to stream to show off your bad side, because who is going to watch that? You know, I can, if I want to watch somebody, you know, have a bad day, I'm going to go look in the mirror and I'm all clear. I don't need to spend 3 hours in somebody's chat to do that.
Amen.
Yeah.
Right. So, but that all takes like a mental health toll. And that's been something that I've been really, really delving into. So I've made a few YouTube videos on it, and I started writing pieces on it, but it's been a little bit halted because I'm in the process of buying a house right now. But they're almost done. I have literally 3 pieces that are like half quarters, 75% of the way done and need to be put out. But so that's what I've been focusing on now. But all of the content is, hey, this thing is happening to me. Why is it happening? Why do I feel this way? Okay, cool. Let's dive into that and then write about it.
I think there's something really interesting to me. I mean, when you said earlier that you've had a lot of content creators reach out to you like with an SOS, I think there's like an opportunity that maybe you've kind of didn't realize, but has happened, where you're able to sort of serve content creators in that way. Like, I almost think of it in terms of like a chaplain for sports teams, you know, I'm not saying like religious stuff necessarily, but where like who's serving the people that serve, you know, like, I think there's a unique space there for you in some way, where they are able to reach out to you because they feel some solidarity because you yourself are a content creator. But you can, you know, maybe serve them in that kind of unique way. That's sort of neat.
Yeah, thank you. That is what I'm trying to do, because it's honestly, it's again, very practical. Enough people came to me and I repeated myself enough times where I'm like, I should make a YouTube video about this, so that next time somebody comes to me, I could be like, hey, go watch this, or just simply, just simply like have already a resource put together to be like, here's the links that I used to make that, YouTube video, whatever it is, basically, to be able to help people more efficiently.
When did you start streaming?
I started streaming in October 2017. Yeah, totally knew that off the top of my head.
Cool.
Yeah.
And when you first started, was it more of the talk show kind of stuff, or gaming, or all of? Did you do it all? Started all at once?
So I don't talk about this a lot. So you guys are getting a juicy question, a juicy answer. I started out as a part creative, part mental health streamer. So what I did, and this is not going to be before anybody gets, I'm not self-deprecating in any way. This is just the honest truth. I started out as a creative mental health talk show. So what I would do is I would like pick a creative thing to do while I talked about something. So the idea was, hey, it's a unique angle, right? But also this is distracting enough that like, if you don't want to talk about mental health, you can just watch somebody make something. Well, so the part
what did you like to make?
Just like, I was bad at it. So like, I literally would do like chain crafts, you know, those like chains that you make out of like strips of paper. And there's like a gratitude pumpkin. Yeah. Like stuff like that, where like I would decorate tea lights with snowmen, or I would like paint a ceramic piece. Like I basically go to Michael's, find the cheapest thing there, and try to make a craft out of it. And I was really bad at even these things. Like I was even bad at these basic things that, again, not self-deprecating, just like honest to God. Like I look at them and I'm like, this is right. You just look at it and you're like, I have 2 left hands and I'm clearly a righty. This is not coming out. Like, I don't want it. I'm not enjoying doing this, because at the end of the episode,
like those memes that you see of like, that say like nailed it, and it's a picture of Pinterest, and it's
exactly. It's literally that. And I would look at it and be like, well, this makes me feel like crap. I don't want to keep doing it. So we moved.
It's really beautiful that your crafts were like crappy, but you kept at it.
Right.
There's something really
for a while.
about that.
Right. But then the second half of that was I would start talking, and then I would forget to do the craft, and then it would be 3 hours later. I would start talking, and then I would do the craft, and it would be 3 hours later, and I'd be like, oh, I just sat there and talked to you guys, but I'm sitting in the creative category at the time on Twitch, so like I probably shouldn't do that. Like it was very clear that I was not really after a while, I came into my own in understanding that I'm clearly not in my lane, and that's okay. I'm just going to remove this piece and play to this strength. And I feel like that's how most streamers evolve, right? You're like, okay, I'm gonna live stream. I'm gonna, okay, I'm pretty decent at Fortnite. I guess I'll throw that up on a screen. All right, well, people really enjoy when I do this thing more than when I'm playing. All right, like I've seen streamers go into like evolve from gaming streamers to just chatting streamers, just because they've noticed that like that's when their community really connects with them, and then from there convert to like political streamers, because they're like, hey, my community really likes when I talk politics about them. Like that's what really gets them going. Why don't I do more of that? So I think, it was kind of a natural evolution of, hey, I'm crappy at this. Why don't I do stuff I'm not as crappy at?
Yeah. I dig it because, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm like grumpy or something, or old. It's probably both. But like I have a hard time getting into a lot of, there's never been a streamer, like gaming streamer, that's hooked me, that I just have to like watch them all the time.
Same.
The fact that it's
We're
diversifying,
that
the world of streaming is diversifying, like a talk show about mental health, like that's really cool. That actually excites me more than watching anyone really play Fortnite. That
is not the problem here, is that, and this might be I don't know. I'm just going to say it. The problem here is that that's not what people come to Twitch or Mixer, or like those are immediate. Like somebody looking for a talk show is not thinking of a live streaming platform as a place to get that. Right.
Yeah.
So that is kind of, they're going to go to podcasts first, frankly. Then they might go to like YouTube interviews. And that's where I've bumped into, I guess, the hardest issue in terms of like where my mental health goes, where I'm like, oh, I'm not growing. People aren't coming by. Is it because they don't want to talk about mental health because it's a bummer? Am I making it bad? Like all of that, where I get stuck in a loop in my head. Kind of is from the fact that like I'm doing something that is new. There are people, and don't get me wrong, and I don't want to discount anybody, there are some fantastic streamers who do their thing and then they talk about mental health. Like Mr. Wild Starfish is a fantastic musician on Mixer who does that. Jordan Lane is another musician who does just that. Then there's Runaway Lobster. She plays games and then like takes a break and talks about how she's feeling and then goes back. And then there's Dr. Mick, who literally just plays games and talks about mental health the whole time while he's playing games. And he's a professional therapist. And he's on Twitch. I can keep naming people. So there's plenty of people who like play games or do their thing and talk about mental health, but there's nobody who's like, yeah, I'm going to take this platform that's for something else and I'm going to just use it for a talk show. And by nobody, I mean, there's me. So
what's the response been like?
It's been really, I feel like when people do find it, they get really excited, and I get just as excited because I'm like, hey, we're here to connect. And they're like, what? This is like a house that I've been this is the house I've been looking for, where I've like, keep laying on different beds, Goldilocks style, and being like, wow, this one is just right. Cause we do a little bit of gaming and we do try to make it not like, I can't talk about mental health seriously for 3 hours. I can't, like my head will explode or I'm going to come off feeling super, super down because I do have depression. I do have anxiety and I do have ADHD, but I don't want that to be my entire life. And which means that I cannot talk about that for 3 hours and I cannot not make light of it. And, like all these like coping mechanisms and just ways that I have made it easier on myself. Like that's how I want to help other people. And if by doing that, we can make mental health a less stigmatized topic, because when people do find it, there's two reactions. One is, oh my God, I've been looking for this. Or the second one is, I didn't know I was looking for this, meaning this is happening. Like somebody's having these conversations. I kind of thought mental health was a bummer. And I just came in here to be like, oh, this is going to be dumb. And they come out of it being like, maybe they're not good, like a long time viewer now, but they will come out of it being like, okay, I learned a thing. That's that's okay, that's cool, this exists, this is
Right.
here. And they might even, then tell somebody else about it who does need it. So it's
Mhm.
it's cool. It is cool, and I'm very grateful for people who stop by and find a home with us.
Well, I would say the way that people are kind of stumbling into your channel, into what you do, um, is like that's kind of the way it has to happen in some ways for a lot
Yeah,
of people.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's just because there's such a stigma still about mental
absolutely.
health that a lot of people who would benefit from the resources that you're providing just don't know that they need them, don't know
Yeah.
how to ask for the resources, and feel weird about doing it. So the fact,
Right.
and there's probably a lot of people in the gaming world that need that kind of help and don't know how to ask for it. Like I'm not trying to stereotype or something by any means, but
Un-
there's just a lot of people that need it. Period. So to be in, and there's like millions upon millions upon millions of gamers,
Yeah.
right? So
Yes, research and statistics are definitely in your favor with that, where it is said that like gaming is a great emotional regulation tool. And if you can extrapolate from that, the fact that like, people on Twitch are gamers, people on Mixer are likely gamers. Okay,
yep.
so if gaming is a good emotional regulation tool, then you're having trouble emotionally regulating, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
There's an
using game.
intersection
So
there.
yeah, so there's definitely, and I've written some pieces on that as well.
Do you want to share at all about like we're about to like ask you about your personal life and stuff, but I know your
Go
book
for it.
is rooted in like a lot of your personal experiences with mental health issues. Um, do you want to give us like an example from your book of something that you write about? And we should say the name of the book too. We've talked about it several times now, but
Oh,
but yeah, it's Well That Explains It, a compilation
yeah.
of research personal essays by Marie Shanley. So, yeah, I don't know. Give us an example that would make our listeners curious to
Become
check it
your
out.
readers.
Yeah,
So there's, yeah, okay. So like the very first chapter is probably the heaviest, and it is the most popular essay I've ever written. And it's about what literally moment by moment, what it's like to wake up with living with depression and anxiety. And
mm,
it's me describing what I feel with my hands, what the floor feels how the floor feels under my feet, how it feels to walk over to, how it feels to greet my dog when I'm depressed, like all these small details that I feel like people, even I, when I'm not depressed, take for granted. So
Mm.
that was like the first essay that I put out there, and that I'm very proud of that one, because that was when my IRL friends, a lot of them came around to what I was doing, because originally it was like, all right, well, there goes Marie, I guess. Oh, she's talking about depression again. We all get kind of weird when she talks about
mm,
that.
What a bummer.
And yeah, is this a bummer? I don't know how to react to this, right? That's a lot of people's, I feel like, reaction to mental health. Like, am I allowed to laugh? Am I allowed to
Yeah.
am I allowed to be sad? I don't know how to react to this, so I'm just going to be uncomfortable. And I don't want to make people like me. I don't want to make people uncomfortable. But that was the first essay that people read through it, and they're like, "Oh, this is what you're trying to do." And I was like, "Yes, I'm trying to make people just aware of what's going on and have more empathy for it,
yeah,
and and be able to walk away not just empathizing because you feel bad and you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes, but empathizing because you genuinely are like, oh, I understand. I've read enough. I've read resources. I've read this person's story or enough people's stories that I can genuinely say, okay, this might be what's happening to them. Just having a level of getting it that's different than just hearing about it or being like, I think this might feel like this. Like reading about it, having that example, I feel like helps people a little bit more to connect. But yeah, so that was the first essay where my IRL friends were like, "Oh, this is really neat. That's exciting. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to, I want to spread the word." And
Yeah.
and so that was awesome. And that was when it was published on the Mxiety. That was a really that was a huge thing for me. And then if you want something on the lighter side that's still kind of serious, like I've one of the other essays that I wrote, I'm a huge Disney nerd. Like it's like inappropriate how much I love Disney. And one of like my favorite movie of all time is Tangled. And
that's a good one.
Yeah, it's if you've seen it, you like it better than Frozen. I'm just saying. But if you no, just to give you an idea, like how much of a fandom I have for this. Like my husband proposed to me at a lantern festival. For those who've seen the movie, like the whole thing is like it's like hardcore. Yeah. So, but it all started. So I say that movie changed my life because I walked out of that movie theater ready to remove myself from a very abusive family situation that I had no idea I was in at the time. So the whole story, like, is it okay if I give a background? How far do you want me to go?
Let's go. So we're just here. We're just here for the ride. You just take us where you want to go.
So the story is that there's this princess and she gets kidnapped, and she's kidnapped for the purpose that she has magical powers, and they help her kidnapper, this witch, continue to stay young forever, right? Yeah. So, and she locks her up.
Mom, right?
Yeah, well, she like makes herself her mom. Yeah, right. She's not a real mom, but she makes the kid believe that she's her real mom. So it's like super murky. Mother knows best. Oh my God. So I'm getting goosebumps just again, and I've seen that movie way too many times. And yeah, so that's a brief synopsis. And so the brief synopsis of my life against that was twofold. So it's not exactly the same. Was not raised in a tower until I was 18. However, my mother going through a divorce when I was turning 8. My mother and father went through a divorce, and we were living in the U.S. at the time. And my mother didn't want to handle the situation, basically, to divorce. So she just got up and kidnapped me. Like, for all legal purposes, it was a kidnapping because my dad didn't know until DIFUS called them and was like, well, your daughter hasn't been in school for a month. And he's like, what? Excuse me? I have a restraining order from her. So I would... like, I don't know what's going on. And so she straight up just took me and brought me to Russia and then left me there to like do her own thing in the US, which is a separate story. And then she left me with this big, I'm very fortunate that I had this big Greek family. And so I was raised by like aunts and uncles and cousins and all of that. And so like, it's like I was literally kidnapped, and this relationship with my mom was very strange because of that. I don't think I need to elaborate more. Like, that's strange.
No, I think that covers it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that covers it. And then I was able to move back to the U.S. because my sister, who was 10 years older than me, at one point she moved to Russia, and then she was like, this sucks. I'm going back to the U.S. And when she graduated college, she pulled me out. She brought me over to the U.S. And so I lived with her, and she calls herself, I call her my sother, meaning my sister mother. And so that relationship.
How old was she, and how old were you? Like,
I was 14 when we moved in. I was 14 and she was 24.
Oh,
yeah. When you moved back to the States.
I moved back to the States. Right. Yeah.
How old were you when your mother kidnapped you?
I was turning 8, so about 7 years. 7 years time.
So you spent like 6 or 7 years there in Russia.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I did not have a great time there either. Like, I mean, my family was great, but like I got bullied terribly because I was from America, and who did I think there was this idea that I was very stuck up, which I look back at and I still like, I want to know if I was, but I can't. Like, I can't see it clearly because I'm like, I don't think I was, but like, because I didn't never walked around being like, I'm from America. Like, it was, but that was how it was persistent. So like, I was bullied. There were physical altercations, and like, it just sucked, man. So my sister, basically the end process was my mom was like, I can't deal with her anymore because she's trouble. And like I had started smoking and going out with boys, and I was 14 and this was a problem. So she's like, I can't deal with her anymore. My sister's like, I'll take her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she brought me to the US. And then after 2 years, it was very clear, like we restarted basically the relationship with my dad, who, and now was remarried and had another child. And she was like, I can't do this. I can't put my life, I'm 24 years old at the time. She's then 26. She's like, I can't put my entire life on hold for this kid that I really, looking back at it, shouldn't be raising. And like, no, this is nothing against her, because she was in way over her head with a kid who I was trouble, but not like, I did all my schoolwork. I was a good kid. I got good grades. I tried my hardest. But like, I had a lot of trouble adjusting, like looking back at it, like, well, no crap. I was definitely depressed and definitely anxious, and definitely definitely later was diagnosed with PTSD. Like, things are not good. And that's not easy to raise a kid like that. So she basically handed me over to my dad. And then my stepmom was as close of an incarnation to, and this is not against stepmoms. I've met actually some really fantastic stepmoms, but this one was a very close incarnation to Mother Gothel, where like there are moments in the movie where she tells Rapunzel like, oh, I just, you're really cute, but you're chubby. And then she's like, oh, I'm just saying that because I love you. Right. Yeah. And so like that kind of messing with her head and making sure that she like to keep making sure that she feels down enough about herself that she never has the courage to leave the tower. And so like that kind of stuff happened to me all the time with my stepmom. Jeez. And yeah. And so I walked into the movie theater, and I walked out of that movie theater and I was like, holy shit, I need to leave. And her reaction the first time I said no to her was also very similar to how Gothel reacts when Rapunzel says no, because Gothel comes to her and she's like, hey, you have to come back to the tower now. And for the first time ever, Rapunzel goes, no. And it was very similar where my stepmom, so part of my job was to clean the house. And so it like usually didn't matter when I did it, but I was going out with a boy and I really liked him and I made that clear. And my stepmom said, oh, you have to come home. Like, you're done with this date. You have to come home. And I was like, why? And she's like, because you have to clean. And I was like, well, that doesn't I can clean tomorrow. I don't see the difference. And she was like, no, you have to come. And I said, no. And I will forever remember that no, because it was exactly the same. And yeah, so then I wrote like, I don't know, it's very long. It's like one of my longest essays.
Who haven't seen the movie, what was the reaction?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. The reaction, Gothel threatens her, tells her that the person she thinks likes her, which is the male protagonist, she's like, he's just going to leave you. And then I'll tell you, I told you so. And you're going to come back crawling to me because you can't do this all by yourself anyway. And so that was a very similar reaction with my stepmom, where she was like, this guy's going to use you and he doesn't like you because who would like you anyway? Like at one point, Gothel and my stepmom literally said, look at you. Who could possibly like that? Like, who could like you? And I remember being very like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And that made sense to me for a long time. So then to be able for me to be able to be like, no, that's not going to work anymore. And so like literally a Disney movie made me leave my abusive family. And that's the title of the essay.
That's amazing.
Wow.
The end.
That's an incredible story.
Dude, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And really encouraging to hear in a way, because it's like, I mean, none of that was fun for you to experience, but like now you're sharing these experiences and people are being encouraged and like getting out of abusive situations and stuff. Like that's got to be really rewarding for you to like be able to just get all that out, and just get it all out on a personal level. But then, I'm sure a lot of people have been really inspired by that story to like make, take the next step that they need to take.
I hope so. And that does give, like, that's what keeps me doing it. This is not easy to do. like by any stretch. I'm not going to pretend like it's easy for me to bare my soul, every 3 days a week and tell people about like what's going on with me or help people who are not feeling well get the resources they need, like all that. But that's the stuff that definitely gets you through it. The line that I'm trying to draw is I'm not here to be like Tony Robbins and be like, I did this so you can do it. Like I tell everybody that, like, if I ever sound like that, please either put me out of my misery or like just make sure you pop that giant head of a bubble that I've developed. Like, do not let me. If you ever hear me sounding like I did it and so can you, like, just, and I do believe that, like, on a very basic level, I do believe that. I think if I was able to get out of the situations that I was able to, I don't know other people's like lives, but I feel like you can do it. I feel like the human spirit can get through a lot, but I talk about that on a very general level and would never imply that like, that you're not doing enough or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. How did you get to that point where you were finally ready to like get all this out there and publicly too? Because I think, a lot of people probably wouldn't or couldn't. And I don't want to like make this normative for everyone, but how did you get to a place where you were ready to talk about this stuff in public?
So that's kind of, nobody's ever put it that way before. So I appreciate that you're giving me stuff to noodle over. I've never thought of it that way, but I had nothing to lose. So I got to a point where this is another downer story that ends up in a good way. So everybody buckle in.
I'm ready.
So I got to a point in 2017 where I am a white woman in my 20s. So naturally I wasn't feeling well. So I went on a yoga retreat to find myself, right?
As one does.
And I went on this yoga retreat and the idea of Mxiety came to me. And because I wasn't feeling well and I was on the verge, I didn't know at the time, but I was on the verge of my second breakdown. So during my first breakdown, I promised myself that if I ever felt better, I would make sure I would do something in this world that would ensure that nobody ever felt the way. Like, I just felt lonely and I felt like I didn't know where to go to. And I felt like there were a lot of stories of people sharing their story, but it wasn't necessarily productive. Like, it's one thing to hear somebody say, hey, I'm having a crappy day and commiserate with them, but I wanted something more out of that. So either like, teach me, how did you get through it? What was on the other side of that? Like, I just couldn't find that. And when I tried, finding a way to do that immediately, like as I started climbing out of my first mental breakdown, and that was my suicide attempt. When I started climbing out of that, I like could not find an organization that I could help without volunteering my time for free, and I could not afford to do that at the time. And I could not afford to take more on because, again, the stuff that I was doing was already bringing me to the brink of this like awful place. Right. Yeah. So a few years passed and I kept like kind of incubating this. And then in 2017, I was in a job where, I was not doing well. I was working really, really late hours and I kept doing that thing that people do where you're like, I'm fine. I know I'm really tired and I'm getting, and I keep like going in this cycle of waking up, going to work, being at work until 8 p.m., coming home, falling asleep, and then doing that all over again. But like, that's fine. People do that. It's fun. This is a fun time. It's a great time. I love my job. I love my life. And I approached people at work and was like, hey, I think I need to go back to seeing a therapist. And they're like, well, you can't take off time from work to do that. And I was like, right. Okay. No problem. Cause I'm having a great time, right? Refer to previous statement. Great time. Totally don't need to suck anything up because this is great. And then I had a very public panic attack at work. And they were like, oh, you seemed fine, because like I would come in and I would smile and I had all my makeup done. Like I looked like a person without a mental illness, or what society thinks a mental illness should look like. And so they were like, oh, I thought you were really okay. And I was like, no. And I thought I made it clear that I wasn't. So now you can see it. And they're like, I think we basically both agreed that maybe I shouldn't do that. And I had to come home to my husband and be like, so we lost a source of income because basically because I had a very public panic attack. And he wasn't surprised because he knew I wasn't okay at this job, no matter how hard I was pushing. But at that point, I was like, cool. So mental illness has officially taken the thing that I thought would be my thing, which is my career. Like I define myself by my career and by my ability to work productive, like a lot of Americans do, right?
Really.
So I was like, this is it. Like this is the end. Either I just, I guess, check out, because what do I do now? I clearly don't have a.
What was your career at the time?
Project manager. I was a project manager. Yeah, in a marketing. Yeah. And I've worked in publishing before, and then I was like, I'm going to try project management. This is the career I want. And so I was like, okay, I gave this a shot, and I totally failed. I ruined it because of my anxiety, and and the anxiety is part of me. So I guess this is the end. And I had to come home, and we had the conversation with my husband, and I was like, I think I have to do that thing that I've always wanted to do, where I make a website, and I think I'm gonna do like a live show. I think and all this was kind of, it started incubating again at that like little yoga retreat I did in the summer. But then by the fall, when all of this went down, I was like, I had a very clear idea of where I was going to start, where I was like, I'm not employed. I got nothing to lose. Either I help somebody or that's it. Like, I don't know what else to do. Yeah. And at that point, like, it's not about bravery. It's not about, it's really giving yourself a purpose to keep going. It's a self-preservation more than anything. It's you just being like, it's literally a last ditch effort to save yourself. And holy smokes, holy moly. Like it saved me. It gave me a purpose. It gave me a reason to keep going. It gave me, I ended up finding a phenomenal job, which was like my dream job, where I get to be an editor and a project manager at the same time in an environment where I don't come home at 8 p.m. and then rinse and repeat the whole thing over again. Like, like I have a boss who's like, hey, work-life balance is really important. And he actually puts his money where his mouth is. It's really cool.
That's cool.
But before I got there, I was on Twitch full time and, did the whole Patreon thing and the blog thing and made a little bit of like side money from the blog. And so all of that was growing and incubating. And then I think I answered your question. So I'm sorry. So I think that's the end of that story. But it started because,
Yeah. So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit.
Go for it.
We do like get personal. So where did you grow up? I know you spent time in Russia, but where did you grow up?
So I was raised in Russia, and then in 1991, my parents moved here because the Soviet Union was collapsing. Okay, and so I was born in Russia, and then moved. And by the way, if anybody's ever interested in like, it's not Moscow. It wasn't always cold. I grew up by Sochi, which is where the Olympics were, right? So the Black Sea coast is where Turkey is. It's pretty warm. It never snows. It's about 4 hours from Sochi, to give you an idea. So when I was 1, we moved here. We moved into Central Jersey in Union County in New Jersey, and we lived there. And then my mom kidnapped me, and I moved back to that little hometown in Russia, and then we moved back to Central Jersey, back in Union County to live with my sister, and then a different town to live with my dad. So it's between New Jersey and Russia.
Did I mean, you've already talked about it a little bit, but what was Russia like growing up?
It was awful. Like, it's not people. All right, so this is my personal experience, so I could say whatever, and nobody take it as like
as gospel.
Yeah, it's not gospel. It's not. I'm telling you, you can't live in Russia or any. I don't want to hear any of that. Like, I'm just gonna be like, this was my experience and it sucked, and I'm honest. It just felt like everybody hated themselves and everybody was unhappy. Like there were no people that were just genuinely happy to be to be alive. And if they are, they're like, it's one of those, you know how it's like a meme where Russian people like do not take pictures of themselves smiling. Like, yeah, like on Reddit, there was that post of like 40, it was like an album of like 40 pictures. And this was this guy traveling all over the world. And he takes a straight face picture in front of like every huge like plate, like in front of the Louvre and in front of, you know, like every monument. Yeah. So it's because like, if you smile, people are like, what are you, an idiot? Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you happy? Why are you so there's no false niceties. There's none of that. And while false niceties also suck in their own way, I still prefer them to this just like, life is pain. Life is, you know, you struggle and then you die. And hopefully you have a lot of good times with your friends in the middle of it. Like, and that felt like the outlook of most people. And it felt very like, I remember feeling so trapped. Like at 10 years old, I remember crying hysterically because my cousin used to bring me to live with her in Moscow for like a few months at a time. And I remember crying hysterically because I came home from Moscow and I was like, my life is over. I was 10. And like trying to explain to my mom why, because I was like, there's nothing for me here. There's no future. Like, I don't want this future. I see what this future is. And there's nobody there's nobody surrounding me who's doing what I would want to do. Like my aunt, any career I could think of, like my aunt was the principal of my high school and she didn't seem happy. My cousin lived in Moscow and she like found a rich man to marry and was in a very, very expensive house and like living her best, like what you can think of like Moscow model life. Like that's what she wasn't happy. You know, I had an aunt who was an entrepreneur. She wasn't like, there's just nothing about that life looked appealing. And my mother was struggling to get by as a teacher and miserable and constantly taking on like side jobs because she couldn't afford to feed me. And like the other day, because of everything that's going on, I had ramen and I looked at my husband and I was like, dude, this is the first time I've had ramen in straight up like 15 years, because after I ate all the ramen I did, after I ate all the ramen I did as a kid.
Privilege showing.
Dude, right? For a while, that was the only thing that I ate as a kid because my mom wouldn't cook, and so I swore to myself that like, you will not eat ramen as long as you live in America. And it was not because we are destitute or anything now. I don't want it to sound like that, but we bought ramen because, you know, it's scary and you want to have that kind of food. And I literally was the first time in my life in 15 years that I opened the cupboard and looked at it and was like, yo, ramen sounds so good right now. That was Russia for me. Just like surrounded by miserable people. I had some really good friends, but not still like nothing, I guess nothing worth staying over. Yeah.
So you ended up being kidnapped back to Russia, and then you came back to the States, and you know, you've already kind of shared a lot of your story with us. I'm curious, like, was religion a part of your upbringing at all? Were either of your parents go to church or anything like that? So
I have a very strange relationship with religion, and I know probably everybody.
Let's get into it.
My favorite.
I think everybody says that, but I'll tell you, and you can tell me what you think. So my mother. I was Christian, like, Christian baptized as in a Greek Orthodox church. And that is how, so like, for all intents and purposes, that is how I was inoculated. Right. Okay. And like I had a godmother and a godfather and all that stuff. But then I didn't, like, my mother would bring us to church periodically, but not, like, it wasn't something she adhered to.
Gotcha.
But it was very strange. Like, church is such a part of Russian culture that there's a lot of things that are intertwined. Like, there's all these rituals that you do when somebody dies that are technically part of what the church does, but also just like part of culture. It's not like you close all the mirrors. You cannot have any reflective surfaces, because if a ghost of your loved one sees themselves in a reflection, they might not leave the house, like stuff like that. And
That's interesting.
and so like the ghost of somebody who dies in your home will not leave for up to 7 days, and then they're allowed to either ascend or descend. And in that time, you cannot have any mirrors, you cannot have TVs on, so any reflective surfaces have to be covered. Like, so that's one of those things. But then my mom was also like, my mom taught me about a bunch of witchy stuff. Like I can like read palms and cards and all that stuff, and which is very, very anti-church. So, but
and like you butt into that stuff back then.
That's why I still don't freaking know, man. Like I don't know. Like I still read cards for my friends on Halloween. Like it's become like the thing we do every Halloween, and the stuff comes true. So I buy into it from the sense of like, hey, as long as it's coming true, then cool. I'm going to keep reading these cards. But if like somebody took it away from me, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, a part of my spirituality is gone, you know?
Yeah.
So did you know about the spiders stuff before?
The what?
I'm kidding.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a bad joke.
No. For a second, I was like, should I know about that?
No, I meant the coronavirus. It was a bad joke.
Oh my God. Oh, like I predicted it. Oh, I'm sorry. I ruined your joke. No, I like feel bad. I ruined your joke, dude.
No, it
happens all the time. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad.
Yeah.
And then my dad was Jewish. And so like I had the option if I want. Dude, like I'm telling you. Yeah. But that was just as practicing as my mom was practicing Greek Orthodox.
Okay.
Like we did Easter, like Greek Easter, we celebrated and all of that, and like did the whole, if you've seen my Big Fat Greek Wedding, you lived through my life, but add Russia to it and more miserableness. Like, but and then on my dad's side, like I had the option to be bad or this is how much I know, but like either bad or bar mitzvah, whichever one the girls are. And I was like, I think. All right. We don't have a fact check too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had the option. I was like, I'm not connected to this at all. But then we followed all the Jewish rites when like my grandma died. Like, so again, a lot of
follow like the food laws and stuff where you're a kosher home.
But like periodically, like very fair weather in every situation. It wasn't ever like, oh, when it's convenient, we're religious. It's not like that. It was more like we adopted parts of religion as part of our like inner little culture as a family. But it was never like religion was never a separate entity that ran part of my life.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Hey, it's really important for you guys to know that I was right, and it is bat mitzvah for girls.
Good.
Okay. Well, I'm very happy for you, and you can take an acceptance speech if you want to at this point for your award for smartness.
Accept your praise. Thank you.
Okay.
So, was there ever a time when you were like, "Here's what I think or believe," or like, did you ever like land somewhere, or you still figuring it out?
So there was this weird moment. Where I was talking to, I feel like a lot of kids have this weird moment with Catcher in the Rye, right? Like something about the book. Like if you're at the right age when you read it, it just like grabs you and you're like, I get it. Everybody's a phony. And then you read it 2 years later and you're like, wait, what? None of this. But I remember reading it and he talked about the fact that he like didn't believe that there was a God because of like, I don't want to go into the whole plot of that book, and I remember bringing that up to my dad and him being like, well, then who controls everything? And I was like, I don't know, like science and nature and stuff that makes more sense. And him being like, no, you have to believe in God because that's how else do you have any morals? And I remember like that was the first time when I was like, oh, I have to take a stance on this. I didn't as a family, we've never taken a stance on this. I had no idea that I needed to have a firm understanding of this, but I was like, no, I guess. So I identify 100% as atheist, like 100%. I believe in entropy. I believe in the laws of nature. I believe in like a lot of things happen to make the world continue turning the way it does. I don't believe that there is any spiritual being up there puppeting the whole situation. I can't. That doesn't. I know. I just can't. That doesn't sit right with me. And no counter argument has ever made sense. So if you have any, I would love to hear them. I'm not one of those atheists that's like, well, yeah, anyway, because Jesus isn't real. Like, it was a historical figure. I'm not going to say that.
I like
so
your
if you have
atheist
any
impersonation.
that's my impersonation of myself. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we really try not to like debate on the show, but you asked, so I'll try to answer. Like,
you asked for this.
Yeah, you stepped into it. So I think for me, like the thing that I guess probably like roots me in, because our organization's a Christian organization, but so Chris and I are both like, surprise, we're both Christians. Yeah. We took, this is a time where we're gonna see if you want to repeat the sinner's prayer.
Okay.
So
repeat after me.
Don't think about it. Just repeat the words.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I don't mind. It's just not okay. Go ahead. I really don't mind. You can make daily bread and stuff. I know. Yeah. I know
but like I think the resurrection of Jesus is probably like the thing that kind of roots me, is this idea of but not just as like yes, as a historical reality. Like I think it's really hard to explain it historically, so that's one thing. But more than that, just as like this idea that of redemption and renewal in the Bible that is rooted in self-sacrificial love is what keeps me like believing, for lack of a better way to put it.
That's fair.
But I don't know, Chris, what would you say?
Oh, I think on my maybe on my worst days, quote worst unquote, I would say I don't have a better explanation than a God. Because I fully believe in science and evolution and all that good stuff. But there's still questions that I don't think can be that I've not found answers to. Or at least satisfying answers to. And so, yeah, I think on my, maybe even most doubtful days or whatever, it's more of an exasperated, well, I don't have a better answer. So this is the one. But I think maybe on my more, the days where I'll probably go to heaven is like, there's a sense of purpose and things that have happened in my life that can't be explained otherwise. Mystical experiences or things like that, it is just down to, I mean, it's like you were sharing earlier, Em, like, hey, this is my personal experience. You can't really dispute it,
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's what it's been for me too, where there's just been these things that like, I cannot explain my way around it otherwise,
Fair.
So yeah, I think it's and I think that's what it has to be. Like true, in my experience, true, genuine like faith or belief in anything, whether we're talking about a God or a set of ethics or morals, whatever, like it has to be experienced and lived, or otherwise I just think it's bullcrap, really. It was for me. I mean, for me, it at a point in time, it was just, hey, I do this thing because you're supposed to do this thing. It wasn't real or authentic. And it wasn't until it was real and authentic and that it actually mattered,
I think the only part, I respect all of that. And that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you have that, because I feel like every person needs that. And whatever gives that to you, again, as long as it doesn't hurt other people, that's great. Good. I think the only thing where I genuinely like put the brakes and start pedaling backwards and will probably run out of the room is when somebody's like, it's okay because God loves you. When I talk about like how I'm depressed and how I have felt suicidal, and people are like, well, you don't have to, God has a purpose for you. So it's okay. I'm like,
the church
I'm
has
really
done
sorry.
so much damage as it relates to mental health. like so
Yeah.
much damage. It's literally, I mean, one of the reasons we exist as an organization is to try to repair some of the damage done by the church to people. Whether that's, mental health or, for us that we kind of use this lens of like nerds and how the church has hurt nerds traditionally. And us trying to, make up and make amends for some of that stuff. So yeah, I get you, man. Like that is prime
It
directive
just feels
number one.
dismissive. It just feels dismissive to be like, oh, I know you're hurting, but like, that's okay because somebody wants you to hurt. That's basically what you're telling me. Like somebody needs you to hurt for now. And I'm like, this is a lot of pain and I kind of want to die.
And you want me to have a relationship with this person?
Right.
Totally.
Right.
Weird. Like they're putting me through this where I feel like I want to end my life, but then this is like, I have to prove anybody. Also, I'm one of those people that like, if you set it up as a challenge, like I'm the competitive person where you set it up as a challenge for me, I'm like, I'm not interested. If you're like, if you make it like a God is testing you, that kind of stuff, I'm like, okay, I don't want to be tested. I'm good. I'm out of this test. I don't need to. I'm at a point in my life. One of the things that I'm very, very few things that I'm proud of myself is that I'm a point in my life where I don't feel like I need to prove things to people. Like I don't feel like I need to prove myself to people. And then especially if you're telling me something that I don't inherently believe in, like, no, I don't want to prove anything to them.
Do you have time for, I know we're like past an hour now, so I want to respect your, do you have time for a couple more questions? You can say no.
No, let's do it, but like maybe like 15 minutes more if that's cool with you.
Sure.
I do have to wake up tomorrow and work, so let's go.
Yeah, no, totally. So I was the question popped in my mind. I think it'd be fun.
Go for it.
So your dad was like, "Well, how do you answer morals and stuff if there's no God?" So I'd be curious.
I like your her dad impression.
That's a really good one. I think that's what I did. Yeah. No, I think that's how like your impression of me impressing him is pretty spot on.
Oh, nice.
Your guys' impressions just sound like California surfers.
Like that an SNL Californian skit.
What did you hear it?
Avocados.
The 4 or 5. Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, what would you say now that you've done a lot of research, you're I think a lot more sure of yourself now. Like how would you respond to that now? Like what's your what motivates the work that you do? That's kind of what I'm thinking, because I think you're very much like all about like being vulnerable and helping people and being vulnerable for the sake of like connecting with people and making them feel less alone. And there's a lot of beauty in that to me. And I'm just wondering like what motivates that work.
Well, I want to answer your morals question first.
Okay.
Because it's a very simple answer. And I remember I had it, which was there's social repercussions to being a terrible person. I mean, not always. I'm not saying bad people always get what's coming to them, but there are. Like if you're a giving, kind person, people tend to be more kind and giving to you. So there's a return on what you give if it's a good thing. Yeah. But that also means there's a return on bad stuff. So what keeps me morally, like if I kill somebody, there's going to be people who are pretty upset who like the person I killed. So what then that puts me in a bad position socially. Why? Like that's enough reason for me not to kill somebody. I understand that like some people have those urges that like they can't control, or it's literally like, it's a mental health issue. And I think that's a separate question. But in terms of like a regular person having morals, they just, I think socially we enforce enough. And, if we raise our kids with, again, morals and religiousness do not have to be one and the same, is my opinion. Mm-hmm. So that's that. And then
the second question is about what motivates the work that you do.
What motivates the work that I do?
Because I think you're like, to me, the work that you do is very like moral, like very ethical. Like there's a real like passion for helping people. I think that you have.
Thank you. I do. I I do really want to help people. I go back to that moment. Like, I remember what it's like feeling completely awful and like you cannot. I remember feeling like I didn't have the answers that I needed. And I remember feeling alone and isolated, even though I was with my now husband, then boyfriend. Like, it's the most bizarre thing where you have everything you need and nothing you want for personal fulfillment.
Yeah.
So like I had the house and I had the husband and I had the job that I always wanted, and I was completely emotionally with nothing. And I don't want people to be there. And then we can talk about it from like a light standpoint where like, I just think it's real dumb that there's still a stigma around this. Like, everybody experiences this. That's like, that's like when you go to around certain groups of people and they're like, oh, we don't make fart jokes here. That's way too low.
Right.
Like, it kind of feels like, oh, we don't talk about mental health because that's like, that just like makes you feel like, like, I don't want people to have that feeling about mental health. Like, I just want it to be something that, you know what? And there's another light, simple explanation to it. I have a neighbor, I'm going to call her Sally. And Sally, every time I see her with her dog, I ask her how she's doing because it's a polite thing to do. And I hear about her heart condition, her bad back, her knee, how her dad is feeling, his bad back, his knee, how he sneezed yesterday. I hear so much about her physical health that like I didn't invite into sharing. But if I were to say, and if she were to ask me how I'm doing and I were to say, I'm feeling really down and dark and the world feels really bleak. Can you imagine the look on that woman's face? Like, just imagine the person I'm describing to you and then imagine how she would respond to that. Right. And that's something that motivates me.
Double standard,
Yes. Yes.
We have no problem sharing that. But like, our brain is a physical organ in our body, the most important one we have. And yet we somehow separate out these things. Man, that's so wild to me.
Yeah, that's exactly. So there's a lot of things that go into that like continue motivating me. One is because people have come back and said, hey, you're doing the right thing. Please keep doing it for others. That definitely motivates me. Yes, I do need other people to tell me periodically that I'm on the right track and that I'm doing something that's helping somebody. So like, there's that. Then there's I don't want to keep hearing about your bad back, Karen, if I can't tell you about my bad brain. I don't feel like that's fair. And like, frankly, I didn't ask you about how your back is doing. So I don't want you to be offended when I tell you about how my brain is doing, like out of nowhere. Like, those should both be just conversations that we could have, because as humans, I believe we can commiserate in both. I can easily say, oh, I'm so sorry about your back and that you had to go into, that sucks, because I can empathize with that. Like, I've been in surgery before, I've had pain before. I can say that sucks and I feel bad about that. But another person for some reason cannot just say, listen to me talk about my depression and be like, oh, that sucks. I'm really sorry. Like, they get nervous, they get uncomfortable, all those things. Right. So that motivates me, is for us to keep having these conversations. And then the other thing is, maybe a little bit holier than thou, where I am, sorry, maybe that was the wrong verbiage, but
you're not allowed to say that. You're an atheist.
Maybe a little bit on a higher, how dare you? Maybe a little bit on a higher horse, where I'm saying like, I'm tired of not seeing information that I can't trust. And if I have to be the person to give that to you, then cool, I will do that. Then also, like, honestly, again, we can simplify that. I love reading about this stuff. I love learning about it. So I'm doing it anyway. I might as well put it out and help other people like learn as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it helps that you're good at the words.
At the verbiage, at the wording.
Yeah. You're really good at it.
Sometimes I get them good. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the right way. I have the best words.
And
I do.
you communicate, I mean, even just, talking to you here, like you communicate passionately and fervently and well about this stuff and authentically and honestly. And that, I think, above anything else, is what that's what people are looking for is authenticity in that stuff. And I think you bring that.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you kindly. I didn't expect this to be a compliment time, but I'll take it. Thank you.
Well, it's over. So yeah. That's all you get.
I'll take any positive thing right now and latch onto it and be like, "This the next 2 weeks. Just think of how they complimented you." Yeah.
I do have a couple more questions, just because I'm really curious.
Go for it. Yeah.
How long have you been married?
I've been with my husband for 11 years, and I've been married for 3. I know math. 3 now. Yeah, 3.5 about.
Cool.
All right. On.
And how's that relationship like shaped you as a person?
I mean, we grew each other up, right? Because we met when we were like 18.5, both of us.
Mhm.
We happened to be born the same year and stuff. And
was this the guy that your stepmom busted your chops about, or a different guy?
Yeah, same guy. Guy. And
eat it, stepmom.
Yeah. Serious. They were at one point, I had come home from a date, and they were my stepmom and my dad were drunk, and they're like, "Let's put bets on when they'll break up." And so
oh my gosh.
The longest one was 4. No, you should laugh, because I remember laughing at the time and being like even if that was to happen, what kind of terrible person says that, right? Like what? So yeah, so she's out of my life, and I haven't talked to her in 6 years now, just about 6 years. So yeah, guess who's betting now? Like, you're not around and he is. So guess who I bet on? It wasn't you. And he gave me courage when I had no courage. He literally picked me off the floor and reminded me and gave me reasons to live when I had none. He's been there through everything that, yeah, I'm forever in debt to him in the best way possible, not in a scorekeeping kind of way, but in the this is the guy. I don't necessarily believe in like soulmates, but this is the other half. This is the piece that I needed to be fully me. Like, I'm my own piece and he's his own piece. I think we've grown into 2 separate people. I think there was definitely a period where we were just one human, because we were, like 18, 19, 20, you're trying to figure out what the hell you want from your life. And, and we've grown into 2 separate people that love each other. But like, I'm buying a house with this man, and we're I remember the night where I had a dream where because I told him, I was like, I'm not getting married. My mom and dad remarried each other twice. My dad married a nightmare. Like, I think marriage is stupid, and it's for people who don't trust each other. And he's like, okay, that's fine. Like, as long as we could be together, I don't really care. And then I woke up one night after having a dream that we got married, and I was like, we're getting married. And he's like, okay, I was in for either ride. But yeah, so there's thick and thin, and then there's everything that he again, like, it's super cheesy, but like, really, he's given me courage when I had no courage. Like, I stopped talking to my stepmom because I knew I always had him, and I left my family because I was like, I have a way better family that I could be giving way more attention and love and care to, that would appreciate it in him, in this one person, than I ever got from people who are blood related to me. And yeah, and now we're raising our child. His name is Flynn, if you were paying attention. If you were paying attention, his name is actually doubly Disney. It's both for Flynn Rider and Kevin Flynn of Tron.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Nice. That's a deep cut right there.
Better choice than Eugene Fitzherbert, I guess.
Yeah, right. It's a little rolls off the tongue, but he's our fuzzy baby boy. And He's turning 5 in April. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do for his birthday, considering everything is quarantined and shut down.
Oh, I know.
Also, he's a dog, so he has no idea that there's a difference, but it's okay.
That's funny. Cool. Well, this was great chatting with you. It's and I like that we ended on that note too, because I don't know, it's just nice to hear a story of like Dude, wonderful relationships. I think all we hear about a lot of times is like the relationships that screw people up and fall apart sometimes.
Right. And then the ones that you carry around.
But like this sounds like he sounds like a really rad guy. So
dude, cool. He is. He's yeah. Oh, you would. You'd play some Smash. Like life is good. He's a good kid. Yeah. It's awesome. Cool. So I do think it's a good note. And if it makes it sound a little too fairy tale-y, it's because it freaking is, okay? Like life sucked and he showed up and then he didn't like solve it all for me. He didn't sweep me off my feet and be like, here's $1 million, solve all your life problems. Like that's not what happened. We both worked our butts off and got to where we are today. And I don't know if y'all noticed, but things suck right now and we're still together. So I do think it's not that like it ends well and like happily ever after, but like it can be good. Yeah.
And because you're still like the mental illness issues that you've had and stuff like those don't just disappear. It's not like it's not like you beat it all of a sudden. Right. But you have this person in your life because my wife and I have gone through some of this kind of stuff too. And but it's just really nice to know that there's somebody that's like in your corner and is not gonna, like, we all need that, whether it's a spouse or whatever, but like we gotta have people in our corner who are like there and are for you, you know?
Yes.
So. Hey, Em, where can people find you? This is the self-promotion part.
Self-promotion part. I think I did enough self-promotion. There was not like pretty shameless, but everything and anything can be found on mxiety.com. Mxiety. No, that's not how you spell it. Oh my God. It's
Mxiety.
It's anxiety without the AN and with an M instead. So there you go. Yeah. And so it's mxiety.com and then mixer.com/mxiety. And if you're looking for my live shows, if you're looking for my tweets of encouragement and love that I try to put out there, it's twitter.com/mxiety. So type that in a social media and I've probably try-harded on that social platform. So you can find me there. Yeah.
And I'd really encourage people.
Where can people get the book?
Yeah.
mxiety.com/ are you ready? mxiety.com/book.
Yes. I guessed it.
And if you're interested, if you're like, I don't like Amazon, I don't want to give them my money, I'm also Barnes & Noble. Like all the links are out there from the website. So you can find it all and do your thing.
And I'm going to challenge your listeners. I actually just bought your book.
No.
Yeah, for real. And here's why. I'm going to explain why, and this will challenge some of our readers. I was like,
well, that explains it. Go ahead.
You were sharing the story, the Tangled story, and I thought, man, I really want to read that. And then there was this part of me that was like, I'll just find that article online somewhere.
Right. Because it's there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, what? That's like, you've gone to the effort of putting these in a book and like you worked really hard on it and I wanted to support you. And so I want to say to our listeners, go support people who are doing cool, good work. Support Love Thy Nerd, support M here and go buy our book. So if you believe in what someone's doing, you should put your money where your mouth is. And so that's why I bought it.
I try to do that as well. Yes.
Get after it. Cool.
I feel like I just sort of like patted myself on the back there now. I feel a little gross about it. But I still do want to buy your book.
It was like a humble brag, but it was fine.
Yeah,
I felt okay about it.
It's a weird flex, but okay.
I didn't feel gross about it until you like mentioned it, and now I feel gross about it.
Okay, good.
Well, we'll just
edit this part out, probably.
It was really cool hearing your story and getting to know you a little bit.
Thanks so much.
And,
That was rad.
it's great.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to everybody else who got through that. I appreciate you, and I hope to see you in a future live stream.
Likewise.